This is probably the first time I'm mentioning this, but before I did drones, I used to be a director in my school's film club. I honestly really enjoyed making films and was just a massive nerd for techniques and equipment. I got to experiment with filming methods for my school projects, and we even got to participate in a competition where, not to flex, but we did win some awards. But because of the pandemic, it was getting hard for me to do both drones and film as a measly junior college student. So I had to make a choice. Film or FPV?
I guess you wonder where I've been, where I've been.
Where are you?
I searched to find love within. I guess you wonder where I've been, where I've been. I searched to find love within.
And I guess this is the timeline where I chose the latter, and in all honesty, I don't regret it whatsoever. However, I do still really miss doing cinematography, and I think you do see occasional glimpses of that in my videos. I've been itching to do with more film and photography these days, and since you guys have been supporting me for the past year now, I honestly managed to get new equipment, try out new exciting things, and even considering doing some film-related content. One of the things I've been wanting to do is cinematic drone shots. I go through social media and it's like every other FPV video is just this absolutely gorgeous, smooth flowing flight that makes me want to do the same. Like, who doesn't want to glide down a mountain or orbit a famous landmark? Which finally brings us to the topic of today's video and my personal favorite micro cinematic rig so far, the OddityRC XI20 Pro. I chose the power combo package for two reasons. The first is simple. I already had some spare electronics that I knew was reliable, so I wanted to use those. Second, as a frame designer, I wanted to verify how easy it was to build this with different parts. I usually tell people that if a build is easy to put together, it should be easy to repair and fix. The power combo package for the XI20 Pro comes with a 2mm carbon frame. It honestly feels really stiff, and the edges has a slight fillet to them, which makes them feel a little bit smooth, and I kinda like that. You also get a couple of 3D prints, namely the VTX antenna mount, one for your T-style receiver antenna, and the secondary camera mount. Naturally, all the M2 hardware is included, so that's the M2 screws that come in multiple lengths, some nuts, and the standoffs. Now, I do wish that these standoffs had some texture to them, as it was a little bit hard getting them tight without scratching them. Nonetheless, I think that's just a minor problem, and don't worry, I've mentioned this to OddityRC, and they're actually looking into that right now. Because this is a cinewhoop, the kit does include some somewhat durable ducts. I'm not saying it's indestructible, but I've crashed it a good number of times now, both in warm and somewhat cold weather, and I've yet to see any major damage to it. I started with quad blades, and now I have a bi-blade. Lastly, the part that honestly makes this drone so much more capable are these Spinnybois 1205 5500 kV motors. And yes, they're named Spinnybois. Spinnybois. Aside from their name, these genuinely feel like premium motors, and I believe these were specifically made for the XI20 Pro. The 1205 motor size is a rare size in the FPV world, but this genuinely makes the drone so much more fun and reliable. According to Bardwell 2023, yes, we're doing APA research now.
A motor that is taller and narrower is going to be more responsive, and a motor that is wider and flatter is going to have better cooling.
The Spinnybois 1205 motors are on the taller side, which means if you wanted to do freestyle with this, you actually could. Or at least if you want to do certain maneuvers that other cinewhoops would struggle with, you can. I will mention though that regardless of my tune, I was getting somewhat warm motors. Again, this goes back to what Joshua mentioned, but it could also be because of the hot Philippine weather. Not too concerning, but I thought I should mention it. I'm pairing these motors with these Gemfan 2020 2-inch quad-bladed props, which personally give the yaw plenty of authority. They're the recommended props and are pretty chunky, but rest assured these motors can handle these. I am using a simple analog setup with the Caddx Ant and Rush FPV Race 2 VTX, but if you plan to go with a digital setup, take note that the XI20 Pro has an analog and digital variant. The only difference is the front camera housing being slightly larger to accommodate something like the 03. I guess now it's the 04. This is just me experimenting with some new stuff I had, but I also had an HDLRC M100 mini GPS module on the XI20 Pro. Still working out how to get this to work reliably, so you won't see too much of that in this video. But if you do want to add GPS to it, there's going to be a Thingiverse link in the description to all the printable files I have for this frame, as well as another person's designs that I think are pretty good. Lastly, you do want a capable flight controller. OddityRC's Bind and Fly actually has an F722 40 amp all-in-one, but I've been using this Mamba F7 with 35 amp ESCs. Their 1205's thrust stand data actually shows a peak of 15.6 amps, so go for ESCs that can handle 25 or more. When it comes to the flight performance, it honestly feels more like a very chunky freestyle setup. You can feel the weight, but because of how powerful these motors are, it's very throwable. You can definitely fly this slow for those cinematic shots, but this can be fast if you want it to be. I would say that this is actually something that you can fly indoors, albeit very carefully and slowly. It's still a 4S 200-gram drone, so you have to be careful, but it can definitely be used for real estate filming. And I'll actually further add that that motor and propeller combination actually feels great for those tight turns. The tune that they have is pretty good, and the only times I get prop wash is when I intentionally drop out of the sky. Mostly because I'm too much of a coward to dive this, but it can easily do punch outs and proper dives. I will say though that because of these powerful motors, do expect lower flight times. I flew all my flights with GNB 660 mAh 4S batteries, and I was reaching around 3 minutes and 30 seconds up to 4 minutes and 30 seconds of mixed flying. There is something really important that I think I should mention, and that's the presence of wobbles in my HD footage. Now, I've spent many weeks and days looking into this, and I've narrowed it down to one thing. Not the drone, but the Runcam Thumb Pro. Now, I'm not really sure why this is the case, but my Runcam Thumb Pro sometimes just doesn't have the right gyro data, and that just makes the footage that's stabilized less stabilized than the actual raw footage. But my workaround for this is to change the lens profile from the Runcam Thumb Pro to the Runcam Orange 5 camera. Not entirely sure how this works out, but it does, and I'm not gonna ask anything about it. However, if you're using a digital system like the 03 or 04, don't worry, I may not have a digital system during the creation of this review, but I did do my due diligence to ask around, and the majority of XI20 Pro digital pilots didn't really have that wobbling issue. Now, I did say that building a drone reflects how easy it is to repair it. And I honestly think that it was really fun building up the XI20 Pro, but you do need to check if the parts you use will fit. Believe it or not, I did build up this drone 4 times with different stacks, all-in-ones, and VTXs. When it comes to the build, the frame gives you plenty of central space for both analog and digital setups. I will say though that you want to avoid VTXs with connectors that stick out. For example, this Rush FPV Tank Ultimate Mini has an MMCX connector, and if you don't use an angled connector on the antenna, it will not fit in the frame because of the ducts. This frame is very compact, but there are many ways to mount stuff to it. Another thing I want to mention is that using a 20x20 stack is feasible, but you do want to grind off a small portion of the ducts so that the ducts don't touch the stack. Now, since my focus is getting clean, smooth HD footage, I do want to fix that issue with the wobbles showing up in the footage when using the Runcam Thumb Pro, cause I actually really love this camera. Heck, I even added the new glass lens to it. Aside from the software stuff that I mentioned for Gyroflow, I do have some future plans on adding what I call custom passive dampening system, which could be a little fun experimental mod. So if you like that, look out for that when it comes out. Another thing that I mentioned is the use of GPS, which I think will be helpful for outdoor flights. I wouldn't say that this is a good platform for long range, but having GPS will certainly be a nice feature if you're in a situation where you're about to lose video. Lastly, I wasn't able to do this with mine, but there is plenty of space to mount an external USB port. You can have the USB end zip tied to the frame, or use a 3D print and solder the other end to the all-in-one. This is just something that I added because I think it's gonna be a lot more convenient because you have an easy access to the USB port for doing your Betaflight settings. I just wanted to mention that because constantly trying to connect this to Betaflight on the original port was really hassle, especially on the 20x20, so an external USB port will definitely save you the hassle. That's all we have for this video on the OddityRC XI20 Pro build. Expect to see this guy a lot more in the future as I have more in store for this guy and those mods that I want to try out. Thank you to OddityRC for letting me try the XI20 Pro. If you guys want to get your own power combo or even the bite and fly, which I know a lot of people highly recommend, there's going to be a link in the description to their website. I've had a number of cinewhoops here and there and even my own design a few months ago, but this is by far the most capable and reliable micro setup that I've had. As always, thank you for supporting this channel and for watching my videos. For once, I do want to plug in my Instagram for a moment, which is at I'm_ricebowl, since lately I've been uploading some other stuff there time to time, like shorts, clips of flights, pre-review videos, and even occasional memes. Again, thank you for starting 2025 with me, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.
Holy! Oh my gosh!
Do it again. Oh my!
That's crazy. You just cut power. I mean, that not like instantly cut power, but you're recording this, right?
Yeah, baby.
Bro, I want to see this.
Oh! Whoa! I did not see those.